The Grand Council chamber had never been so quiet. 50 of the galaxy's most powerful beings sat in stunned silence as they watched the holographic display showing another world falling to the crystal beings. The beautiful green planet turned gray and lifeless as crystal structures spread across its surface like a disease. High Counselor Reed, a tall blue-skinned being with 4 arms, stood up from his floating chair. His silver robes sparkled in the dim light as he addressed the chamber. This is the 12th world we have lost this month. Our weapons do nothing. Our shields fail. Our best warriors retreat. We need— He paused, his face showing clear disgust at what he was about to say. We need help from the Deathworlders. Gasps filled the chamber. Someone dropped a datapad, the clatter echoing through the silence. Calling humans for help was unthinkable. They were violent, unpredictable creatures from a planet that should have killed them. Earth, classified as a death world, had extreme weather, dangerous predators, and gravity that would crush most species. Somehow, humans not only survived there but thrived. You cannot be serious. Professor Green, a plant-based being, waved his leaf-like arms in protest. Humans are barely civilized. They still fight with their hands. They eat meat. They sleep lying down. High Counselor Reed's 4 hands clenched into fists. And that is exactly why we need them. Look at this. He played another recording. It showed crystal warriors, 9 feet tall and gleaming like diamonds, marching through energy weapons fire without harm. Our advanced weapons cannot stop them. But humans— He switched to a different recording, this one from Earth's history archives. It showed humans in primitive combat, using simple tools and their own bodies to fight. They understand physical combat in ways we have forgotten. Reed continued. The crystals are immune to our energy weapons, but maybe they can be broken the old way. The human way. Council Member Blue, a floating gas cloud contained in a transparent suit, moved forward. Even if we agree, how do we know they will help? Humans are not part of the Galactic Alliance. Because that is what humans do, Reed replied. They help, even when it makes no sense, even when it puts them in danger. They call it doing the right thing. He looked around the chamber. And right now, they might be our only hope. The vote took less than an hour. With the crystal beings destroying world after world, even the proudest council members saw the truth. They needed help, and humans were their last option. The message was prepared and sent toward Earth, traveling faster than light through the quantum network. It read, to the leaders of Earth, the Galactic Alliance requests immediate assistance. Our civilization faces extinction. We have heard humans are powerful warriors who help those in need. We offer full Alliance membership in exchange for your aid against an unstoppable enemy. Please respond quickly. We are running out of time. As the message sped toward Earth, High Counselor Reed looked out at the stars through the chamber's crystal windows. He wondered if he had just saved the galaxy, or doomed it by inviting in something even more dangerous than the crystal beings. Only time would tell. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats as Captain James Walker strode into the chamber. At 6 feet tall, he wasn't particularly large by human standards, but to the assembled aliens, he was a giant. His muscular frame and confident walk made several council members retreat slightly in their chairs. So, you're the ones who called for help, Walker said, his voice echoing in the chamber. He didn't bow or show any of the traditional signs of respect the council was used to. Instead, he stood straight, hands clasped behind his back, scanning the room with alert eyes. High Counselor Reed floated forward. Captain Walker, we appreciate Earth sending. His words cut off as Walker caught a falling datapad that Professor Green had dropped. The speed of the human's reaction made the entire chamber gasp. Sorry about that, Walker said, carefully handing the pad back. Quick reflexes comes with growing up on Earth. He smiled, but the expression only made some council members more nervous. They had read about human facial expressions, but seeing one in person was different. Perhaps a demonstration of your capabilities. Reed suggested, trying to regain control of the situation. He gestured to a testing area they had prepared. Walker nodded and stepped into the transparent chamber. The gravity increased to 3 times normal levels, standard Earth gravity. While the council members watched in horror, Walker began doing push-ups. "This is comfortable for you?" Professor Green asked, leaves trembling. "Pretty much," Walker replied between push-ups, "though I usually work out at higher gravity." The next test involved temperature resistance. The chamber heated to levels that would kill most species. Walker simply removed his jacket. When they dropped the temperature below freezing, he put it back on and asked if they had any real challenges. The final test was combat. They sent in 3 training droids, each programmed with different fighting styles. Walker disabled all 3 in under a minute, using nothing but his hands and a metal rod he picked up. "Barbaric," someone whispered, but there was awe in the voice. "Effective," Walker corrected, stepping out of the chamber. "And that's what you need right now, isn't it? Something effective against these crystal beings." High Counselor Reed nodded slowly. "You understand this will be dangerous. The crystals have destroyed entire worlds." Walker's expression turned serious. "That's exactly why I'm here. Earth may not be part of your alliance yet, but we protect those who need help. It's what we do." He paused, looking around the chamber. "Now show me everything you know about these crystals. And I mean everything. Especially the things you think aren't important. Sometimes the smallest detail makes the biggest difference." As the council began their briefing, Reed noticed something interesting. The fear in the chamber had changed. They were still afraid, but now their fear of the human was mixed with hope. Perhaps these Deathworlders were exactly what they needed after all. The emergency alarm blared through the colony of New Hope. Crystal beings had appeared on the outskirts, their massive forms glowing in the planet's twin moonlight. The local defense force, equipped with the latest energy weapons, prepared for another hopeless battle. But this time was different. Captain Walker stood at the front line, wearing only light armor and carrying what the aliens considered primitive weapons, a reinforced metal staff, and several explosive devices. "Remember what I told you," Walker called to the mixed species defense team behind him. "They're crystalline. That means they have cleavage planes, breaking points. Hit them there, and they shatter." The crystal beings advanced, their footsteps shaking the ground. 15 feet tall, their bodies reflecting light like walking diamonds. Energy weapons from the defenders bounced harmlessly off their surfaces. Walker waited until they were close, then threw a small device. It exploded with a deep boom, sending shockwaves through the ground. The crystal beings stumbled, their normally smooth movements becoming jerky. Now, Walker charged forward, moving faster than the aliens thought possible. His metal staff struck the nearest crystal being at an angle he had carefully calculated. A crack appeared, then spread. The massive creature shattered like glass. The defense force watched in amazement, then followed his lead. They began using sonic weapons, projectiles, and even simple clubs. Things they had considered too primitive were suddenly effective. "Aim for the joints," Walker shouted, demonstrating by striking another crystal being where its arm met its shoulder. It split cleanly, the arm falling and breaking into pieces. The crystal beings, faced with an enemy that could actually hurt them, began to retreat. Their usual perfect formation broke down as they tried to avoid Walker's attacks. "They're running." Professor Green, who had insisted on observing, couldn't believe his eyes. They'd never retreated before. Walker didn't celebrate yet. He organized the defense force to secure the perimeter, teaching them how to set up simple but effective traps using sound and impact weapons. Later, in the colony's command center, he explained, the crystals relied on being invulnerable to energy weapons. They never developed defenses against physical attacks because they never needed to. Sometimes, the simplest solution is the best one. High Counselor Reed, watching via hologram, nodded slowly. Perhaps we have been too focused on advancing our technology. We forgot that sometimes older methods still have value. That's what makes humans different, Walker said, cleaning his staff. We keep the old ways alongside the new. Energy weapons are great, but sometimes you just need to hit something really hard. The news spread quickly through the galaxy. For the first time, a colony had survived a crystal attack. More importantly, they had driven the invaders away. The Council's desperate gamble on a Deathworlder was starting to pay off. Prepare training programs. Reed ordered. It's time our forces learned to fight like humans. Again, Walker's voice echoed through the training arena. A mixed group of aliens from 20 different species struggled to complete the obstacle course he had designed. They carried weighted packs and primitive weapons, learning to fight in ways their ancestors had forgotten millennia ago. "But Captain," gasped a blue-skinned trainee, "we can't possibly match your physical capabilities." Walker helped the exhausted alien up. "It's not about matching human strength. It's about understanding physical combat. Each of you has unique abilities. Some of you can fly. Others can stretch. Some can see in frequencies I can't even imagine. We're going to use all of that." The training facility, built in an asteroid belt, had sections for every type of combat scenario. Walker had designed it with different gravity zones, temperature variants, and terrain types. In one area, trainees learned to fight in zero gravity using momentum and simple tools. In another, they practiced using sonic weapons tuned to crystal resonance frequencies. "Look here," Walker demonstrated, striking a crystal sample. "See how it breaks along these lines. Every species here has the strength to break crystals if you hit the right spot. It's about precision, not power." Professor Green, who had become one of Walker's most enthusiastic students despite his initial skepticism, floated forward. "I've been studying the crystal fragments. Their structure has a fascinating weakness to certain frequencies." "Exactly," Walker grinned. "That's why we're combining old and new. Traditional combat with advanced technology. Sound weapons with physical strikes. Multiple approaches to solve one problem." The breakthrough came during a simulation battle. A plant-based trainee, unable to match others in strength, discovered they could grow vines through crystal joints, then contract them to shatter their opponents. A gaseous being learned to fill crystal beings with sonic resonating particles. High Counselor Reed watched from his observation post as the once awkward group became a coordinated fighting force. They moved like nothing the galaxy had seen before, a blend of advanced alien abilities with primitive but effective combat techniques. "They're ready," Walker reported after 3 months of training. "Not just ready to fight, but ready to teach others. We've created a whole new combat doctrine." Reed nodded, his 4 arms moving in the gesture of highest approval. "And not just combat doctrine. We're learning to think differently, to see strength in what we once considered primitive, to combine the old with the new. That's humanity's real gift to the galaxy," Walker said, watching his trainees practice. "Not our strength or our violence, but our ability to adapt, to combine different approaches, to never stop learning new ways to solve problems." The crystal beings wouldn't know what hit them. The crystal homeworld loomed ahead, its surface gleaming like a giant diamond in space. The combined fleet of the Galactic Alliance hung in high orbit, their ships modified with new weapons based on Walker's insights. "This is where we end this," Walker said from the bridge of the command ship. His elite team, now known as the Breakers, stood ready. Each member wore specialized armor designed to amplify their natural abilities, while protecting them from crystal shards. Their main hive is located in that formation. Professor Green indicated a massive crystalline spire that rose miles into the atmosphere. "But the energy shields are still too strong for our fleet." Walker smiled. "That's why we're not using the fleet to break in." He turned to his team. "Remember your training. They fear us because we're unpredictable. Let's show them why." The attack began with a barrage of sonic weapons that created a web of cracks in the planet's defensive shields. As the crystal beings rushed to repair them, Walker's team launched their pods directly through the weakened areas. Impact in 30 seconds. Walker called as their pod plummeted through the atmosphere. Around them, other pods carried teams of various alien species, each trained in the new combat methods. They crashed through the crystal surface like meteors, the specially designed pods shattering the ground beneath them. The crystal beings, used to fighting organized armies with energy weapons, found themselves facing something entirely new. Plant warriors grew through crystal structures, shattering them from within. Gaseous beings filled crystal bodies with resonating particles. Flying species carried sonic broadcasters that created webs of cracks in vital structures. Walker led the charge toward the central spire, his team moving with practiced precision. "Formation Delta," he commanded, and the team split into predetermined groups, each targeting structural weaknesses they had identified. The crystal beings fought back, but their rigid, predictable tactics were no match for the chaos of Walker's approach. Where they expected a frontal assault, they found attacks from below. When they defended their bases, the teams struck at their peaks. Then came the moment that turned the tide. Walker's team reached the central control chamber, where they found something unexpected: the Crystal Overmind, a massive consciousness that directed all crystal beings. "Your chaos," it resonated, its voice shaking the chamber. "How do you function without perfect order?" "That's our strength," Walker replied, setting the final charges. "Order is brittle. Chaos adapts." The charges detonated, not destroying the Overmind, but fracturing its perfect crystalline structure. Through the cracks, the truth they had discovered in training became clear. The crystal beings couldn't handle disorder. Their perfect formations began to break down. Their coordinated attacks became confused. Victory was within reach, but a new challenge arose as the crystal beings, now acting independently for the first time, began to fight with unpredictable desperation. The crystal homeworld sky blazed with energy weapons and explosions. Freed from the Overmind's control, the crystal beings fought with newfound desperation. Their perfect formations were gone, replaced by chaotic individual combat that surprised even Walker. "They're learning to be unpredictable," Walker called to his team as they fought their way through the crystalline corridors of the command center. "Stay alert. They're not following patterns anymore." Professor Green's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, our sensors show the planet's core is destabilizing. The crystal beings are attempting to overload their power systems. They'd destroy their own world." High Counselor Reed's shocked voice joined the channel. "Of course they would," Walker replied, ducking under a crystal blade. "They're choosing chaos over defeat. They finally understand." He turned to his team. "New plan. We're not here to destroy them anymore. We're here to save them from themselves." The breakers split into smaller groups, fighting their way toward the planet's main power cores. Each team used their unique abilities in ways the crystal beings never expected. Plant warriors created paths through solid crystal walls. Gaseous beings carried sonic disruptors through microscopic cracks. Walker reached the main power core first. The chamber was massive, filled with pulsing crystal formations that channeled enough energy to shatter the planet. Crystal warriors guarded it, but they were fighting differently now, unpredictably, desperately. "Listen to me," Walker shouted, lowering his weapon. "You don't have to do this. We're not here to destroy you." The crystal beings hesitated. One stepped forward, its voice resonating through the chamber. "Our perfect order is broken. What else remains?" "Growth remains," Walker answered. "Change remains. Look at how you fight now. You're stronger than before, more adaptive. You can be more than just perfect order." The chamber fell silent except for the humming of the power core. The crystal beings looked at each other, then at their own bodies, seeing the cracks and imperfections that now made them unique individuals. The lead crystal being stepped toward the power core's controls. For a moment, Walker tensed, ready for combat. Instead, the being began powering down the core. "We choose." The being's voice wavered with newfound individuality. "We choose to adapt." Throughout the planet, crystal beings began laying down their weapons. The war wasn't ending in destruction or conquest, but in understanding. The galaxy's most rigid species had learned the value of imperfection. As the power core's dangerous glow faded, Walker smiled. Sometimes the greatest victory wasn't in destroying an enemy, but in helping them change. The Grand Council chamber was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every species, including the newly reformed crystal beings, gathered for the historic session. Captain Walker stood at the center, his presence no longer causing fear but commanding respect. "The war is over," High Counselor Reed announced, his 4 arms raised in the traditional gesture of peace. "But more importantly, we have all changed. We have learned that strength comes in many forms, and that adaptation is more powerful than perfection." A crystal being stepped forward, its surface showing the beautiful imperfections of individual growth. "We request to join the Galactic Alliance, not as conquerors, but as students of change. Our rigid perfection nearly led to our destruction. We wish to learn more about chaos, about adaptation, about humanity." Walker nodded. "And we have much to learn from you. Your technology, your precision, your understanding of order. These aren't weaknesses when balanced with flexibility." Professor Green, now sporting battle scars on his sleeves that he wore with pride, activated a holographic display. "We've already begun combining crystal technology with human combat techniques. The results are extraordinary. Imagine shields that adapt like living things, weapons that respond to thought with both precision and creativity. Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Alliance," Reed declared. "And Captain Walker will lead our new combined defense force, training all species in both advanced technology and what did you call it?" "The basics," Walker grinned. "Sometimes you need a quantum computer, and sometimes you need a really big stick." The chamber filled with laughter, a sound that would have been considered inappropriate just months ago. Even the crystal beings joined in, their bodies chiming like wind bells. "But the greatest lesson," Walker continued, his voice growing serious, "wasn't about fighting at all. It was about understanding. Every species has strengths. Every species has weaknesses. Together, we're stronger than alone." The council session ended with a new tradition, a physical handshake, a human gesture of trust and friendship that spread across the galaxy. The crystal beings learned to adjust their hardness to match each species' strength, creating perfect handshakes that symbolized their new adaptability. As Walker looked out at the changed galaxy, he smiled. They had needed a savior, but what they'd really needed was a teacher. Sometimes the best way to save someone was to help them save themselves. The age of rigid perfection was over. The age of adaptive growth had begun. And somewhere on Earth, humans were already wondering what other adventures awaited them among the stars.